Well, hello. Here we are again. Nice to, well, I can't see you. You can see me. Nice for you to be able to see me, I could say. Whether or not that's true, I don't know. Anyway, hello. Yeah, I thought I'd make a video because it's been plaguing me to do so. It's a funny thing, really, because I think about this stuff all the time. But whenever I think about sitting down and actually talking about it and writing, I've been trying to write as well, making these videos to share with you, what I'm finding now is that no matter what I want to express, I know that I'm always leaving out a large proportion of what I want to say, because it's impossible. It's just impossible. And there's so much of it over so wide a scale that it's really hard to express it to the point that I feel that it's useful, because there is absolutely no point whatsoever in me doing this and you listening to this if all I'm going to do is tell you or say things to you that other people have already said, because that's already there, isn't it? What is the, no point at all. That's a nice ray of light coming in. It's kind of a little bit like Jesus is here. Anyway, I'm in a silly mood today. I'm in a silly mood a lot of the time now because I realise I don't have to be sensible. I don't have to be sensible, serious. I don't have to be anything other than what I am. And it doesn't matter. None of it matters. We put so much importance on what matters, and nothing matters. It only matters in our funny little perspectives. It's really bloody stupid how we spend so much time worrying about what other people think and feel about us. And we can never know, because even when someone says something to you and they tell you how they feel about you, you don't know. I used to get upset. If I was out and somebody gave me a dirty look that I didn't even know, that would have hit me and I would have carried that around with me, and that could have led to me spending the rest of the day feeling inadequate, because somebody in their own world that has nothing to do with me showed me a face that I took as negative. That we do that all the time with life. We judge it all so much, and it's just so pointless. We think that people are thinking about us far more than they are. We think that people, I used to feel, when I went in a shop or something, I used to feel like everybody was looking at me and finding fault in me. And you realise people don't give a shit about you. We're just mad. This whole humaning is a crazy thing. Anyway, I've gone off on one here. What I want to try and do is explain this from my perspective, from where I see it from now, because that perspective has changed and it's become clearer and clearer what the actual dynamic is of my personal experience. Because I can't say to you of experience, because my experience is not your experience. We're all one thing doing our own little individual bit. So anyone that says it's like this or it's like that, how do you know? It might be for you, but it doesn't mean it is for somebody else. So I know that it's only my perspective. So don't believe me. Don't think, oh, this is what's going to happen to me, or that you'll end up seeing it like I see it, because you might not. And how I see it could actually hinder you finding how it works for you. So take everything with a pinch of salt. Don't believe anything. Find out your own truth inside. So use this sort of thing as a guide that may ring true or not, but don't try and believe it if you don't. Because it's not your reality, it's my reality. Find your own reality, because it's in there. Each of us. The funny thing is each of our realities is completely individual, but it's the same thing having all the experiences. It's like there's one massive ball of clay and all these things are pressed into it, but it's still all the clay. It's just different aspects and experiences of that same thing. But every single experience that's being had anywhere is different, because consciousness can express itself in as many ways as there are things to express itself in. And you're just one of them. You're just an expression of consciousness. You literally are just that. But we put so much weight onto that, and we make ourselves so small because we're so conditioned by life to believe ourselves to be really small, because we're not taught that we're that, are we? At all. So I certainly wasn't. I think you're very lucky if you were, or if you are, taught that we're that at all. Absolute opposite of that. We're taught that we're this tiny little thing that must do as it's told and comply. Drop your creativity, your what you are, and be what we want you to be. That's what we're taught. And we believe it. Of course we do. That's what, we believe what we're taught from those that teach us. Because we're sponges. When we're little, we're just a sponge that's absorbing. And that creates our reality that we carry around with us all of our life. Unless we don't. And it is possible not to. So, what I'm going to do is talk about how I see it from my perspective. So, right, okay, I see it like, I've only got 2 hands, unfortunately. I say that, I wouldn't really want 3, because that would be another obstacle, wouldn't it, to overcome. Be useful for tasks, but anyway, so imagine I've got, well, no, don't imagine I've got 3 hands. I'll just use this one twice. Sorry, now I'm going to try and be more sensible. Okay, so what we are is this part. This is the part that is completely connected at all times to reality. Never ever steps into falsehood. It knows what it is. It never forgets what it is. It can't forget what it is. It is reality. Now, it's a very strange thing, because in itself, it's not one thing, it's all things. And it has many layers of it in this actual experience and in all the other experiences. It's multi-layered. But so it has a front that's like the front facing outwards, where the humanness comes out. But this way, it goes goes on huge, as Donald would say. I sat in that space for many, many hours, just sat there, trying to fathom it. And what I've realised is unfathomable, because it's the humanness that wants to fathom it. So my human self is what's interested in what I am when I'm not humaning. But it's kind of tricky, because what happens is you're not entirely in that place, you're in your humaning like I am now. And so from this point I'm thinking, what is that? I wonder, what is it? What am I? I mean, that's really my only question. What am I? What am I? What is this? But I've realised it's unknowable, actually. But so when you go out of this humanness into that place, you have 100 questions when you're here. But it's kind of, when you get there, your humanness becomes completely unimportant. Unimportant to the point that once you get to this point, you don't want to even think about it. It's just completely uninteresting. When we're in our human self, our life is very important to us, isn't it? It's, we think we're something. We think that this is, a big deal. And then you go out into that place. And I say go out into it, I mean you go into it. But it feels like out, because it's not restricted. So it doesn't hold the restrictedness of your humanness. And so it feels massively vast. And what I found is sitting in it is that it appears to be nothing. And ultimately it is nothing. But within that nothing, contains everything. It contains every single thing that ever has been, ever will be, is. And it knows every single thing, every molecule, everything. It knows it as self. And so, from the perspective of the whole, there is nothing that is not known. And because there is nothing that is not known, there is nothing to know. Because you are all of it. It's everything. And so if there's nothing to know, and there's nothing observing that, there's nothing. But within that nothing is everything. Everything. And so when I'm in my humanness, I think, oh, it'd be good to go into the nothing place where everything is, and look around in the nothing everything, and have experiences within that of stepping out of my experience and into other experiences I'm having in other places. But what I find is that when you get there, you have no interest in your own life and your own experience. It becomes as if it's just like a memory of something a million miles away that you just think, oh yeah, that. Yeah, whatever. It's like remembering a film you watched 10 years ago that you vaguely remember, but you're not interested in thinking about now. But you also find that everything else has that quality too. So it's like you cross the barrier of inquisitiveness. But when you get there, you're no longer inquisitive. So you never come out with anything except for the knowing that you're everything and nothing simultaneously. But it means that nothing holds any weight. You know, I've never been that interested in... My interest has always been about this. What's happening here that influences me here? I'm not really interested in seeing other dimensions. I've seen other dimensions in as much as I've had visions of other lives that I am simultaneously having at the same time as this. But, you know, that's just... Oh, I don't know. It's just a thing that happens. I'll maybe talk about that at some other point, but it's not really, because we are, you know, I know now that I am all things. So if I get a glimpse into another thing that I am, it's sort of interesting, it's fascinating, but yeah, so we're that, okay, so at our deepest level, that's what we are. We're this thing that is everything and nothing, and it does all of us, and we grow out of that place. We grow out of that nothing to have experience, so that this can experience itself, so it can turn away from itself, basically, to have experience. And that's what we are in our rawest human form. We are the part that comes out of the absolute knowing into not knowing. Because the thing is, if consciousness comes into it without a sense of unknowing, then what would be the point? It's like if you made a ghost train and you set the ghost train up and then you got in the carriage to go on the ghost train, you wouldn't be scared, would you? Because you've made it. So you know everywhere that everything's going to pop out. So what would be the point? You might go, oh yeah, I've done a good job of this. But you can't have the thrill of the ride. Because you made the ride, you are the ride, you're everything in the ride, and you know, so you have to have a separateness, and that's what we are in our rawest human form. And in that form, we have this mind, and now this mind, it appears, can't stop thinking. It has to be thinking, because if it's not thinking, there's no humaning happening. Now, I've experienced that. Of no humaning. Well, I say I've experienced it. I haven't experienced it, but I've experienced the gap in time that was left by me not being here. I had an experience one night where I was deep in meditation. Well, I had been. And then I'd come out and I kind of go in and out, and I poured myself a cup of tea and put it down because it was too hot to drink. And then I sunk back into meditation. And then I came back out of it, picked up my cup of tea, and it was absolutely stone cold. And it's like, that's weird. And it had like, you know that film that goes over the top when something's been left a while, like it's like a crackle glaze kind of thing that you get into. And I looked up because I was sat downstairs outside, and it was about 11 o'clock, I think, when I disappeared. And I looked up, the tea was cold, I looked up at the sky, and the sky was wrong. I just instinctively knew it was wrong because the sun was coming up in the background. It was coming up over where it comes up from. Not that I see that very often, mind. I am more of a night bird than a morning bird, but I do know the direction. And then I was thinking, the sky's gone wrong. It was kind of, what the hell's going on? My tea's cold, the sky's gone wrong. And I thought I must be having an out-of-body experience or a lucid dream. I thought, oh God, it's worked, because I've tried to do lucid dreaming and out-of-body experiences before, because it's kind of, why not? Why not experiment with everything that's available or possible? And so I was thinking I must be having a lucid dream. And so I sat there for a few minutes, and then I looked at my computer. It was shut. I opened it up to look at the time, because this is weird, it looks like daybreak. You know, it can't be. But it was. It was nearly 6 o'clock in the morning. And so 6-7 hours had just gone away, because I don't know where they went. They didn't go, I went. I disappeared so far out of my humanness that I didn't exist. And so what was just left was just a gap in time. And so there has to be a human element for this to be happening. So this human that grows out of that comes into this life to be, when you're born, it's completely pure, and it has no expectations. It doesn't know. It doesn't know what life's going to bring, or what it's going to be, what it's come into. You know, it's completely raw and fresh. And you look at a baby, and you see that. You know, I've got a grandson now he's just over 8 months old, and he's just so amazing to watch. I look after him some evenings when my son and his partner are at work, and I'm just absolutely mesmerised by him. The whole time I'm with him, all I do is look at him and play with him, look at him, be with him, sniff him. He's delicious. But just watching him come to life, it's just amazing. And you see how, from not even minute to minute, second to second, his expression can change. He can be laughing, and then he can be screaming, and then laughing again, all in the space of 5 seconds. One night, I was looking after, he's got to the point now where he's starting to get into the crawl position. And because we live in Spain, everyone has tiled floors, and it's quite, you know, they're hard, aren't they? But I'd made kind of like a den and put cushions all around it, and he was manoeuvring himself, and somehow he managed to get his head between 2 cushions, and he banged his head on the floor. And it made quite a crack sound. I thought, oh no. And he screamed. An almighty scream came out. And just in the time, because I was sat with him, he wasn't alone, as I sat down, bent and picked him up and turned him round, he did that big in breath, and then this massive scream. And then as he turned around and he saw my face, and I looked at him, he burst into a massive grin, because the pain was there when he hit his head on the floor. By the time I picked him up and turned him around, it wasn't there anymore. And so he wasn't thinking, oh God, I've just hit my head. Oh God, I wonder if I'm going to have a bruise. Oh, I should be more careful, like we would. Oh, it could have been worse. I would have to go to hospital. All that stuff that goes around in our human grown-up minds, there's nothing like that in a baby. It's just expression. But as we get older, we're conditioned. And the conditioning comes about because we have to follow the rules of our society, and our parents and everyone around us, they put those rules into us, and that isn't our natural state. Our natural state is absolute free expression, creative expression. Consciousness has no rules. We make the rules. We're conditioned, and what happens is this natural part of us that is so completely free and open and honest, that gets squashed, and it does. We squash it into a box and we tell it not to come out. You think about how we treat our young, how, you know, we put them in school, and what we're saying to them is, what you have to do is absorb all these stories that we've made up through history, and this is reality and what you are. You are this that we're telling you. You have to know all of this stuff, all these stories. But if a child goes off in its own head, into its own stories, that's considered wrong. It's like, absorb all of our stories, but ignore your own. Your own stories are not worth having. They're not, like you see a kid, get out your head, get out, stop daydreaming, stop, it's mad. We just fill our kids with rubbish and cut off their own expression. We stop them being able to absorb the world because we're telling them constantly what the world is. But they're perfectly capable of finding that out by themselves. But the kids are sponges and they're constantly wanting to know what everything is. But we fill them with right and wrong and good and bad, and we can't help it. It's a dual world. That's the thing. This whole experience is a dual experience. So to begin it, to even, as soon as you come out of consciousness, you're entering a dual world. And you cannot be non-dual in a dual world. How can you be? Even every word you say, every movement you make is dual. You're constantly deciding yes or no, good or bad, right or wrong, in every moment. We program this part of our mind. But the thing is, it's very pure and it's very natural. So when the programs come in, this is where this natural part of us, which when you get rid of this thing I'm going to talk about now, disappears. When you get rid of that, this is what you're left with. This is what being awake is. It's being just in this part that knows that it's that part. The part that comes out, when it realises it's not this shit over here that's going on, it can meld back in, and it's kind of as if this part ends up submerged in that, sticking its head through. It knows all the time. You end up knowing that you're this, and there's no separation between you. And when you realise that, it is such a bloody relief. It just changes everything, because you no longer have to have this fear of separation. Because the thing is, people like us, if you're watching this, unless you're watching it because you're someone I know and you're just being nosy, if you are, yes, I have gone mad, you're right. If you're watching this, the chances are you're like me. You're one of these types of people that we can't help this. We can't help wanting to know. It's something in us. It's too near the surface for us to push down, and so it never goes away. And it's always there in the background, and we never lose that connection. And I think that's why we struggle with this world so much, because we can't ever completely submerge in it, because we know it's wrong. We know that this non-reality is not real. And that's why we end up on this quest to find what our reality is. I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know what I'm saying. I might have to edit this out. Needless to say, I'm still not, I haven't turned into some kind of amazing genius. Hopefully that's going to happen soon. I still have this quite funny mind. Yeah. What I'm left with, actually, what I found out, because I don't have this made-up mind, which I'm going to talk about in a minute anymore. I just have this one mind that does this. It's not a very good one. It's not the brightest spark in the world. I cannot find the way to take what I know and talk about it properly, because as it translates through what I have, it gets broken. But I'm trying my best, because I don't know why I'm doing it. That's changed too, because when I realise now that when I first started doing this, there was this urge to share, but there was also this kind of real feeling of delight of breaking through and wanting to share that with people, of just going, yeah, God, it's happened. And so some of it was sort of just the need to express. But now I don't really feel that quite as much, but the urge to do this has not gone away. But it gets harder, because what you're trying to talk about gets harder, because it gets more and more tricksy as it goes along, and harder to put in a box. So yeah, so you end up with, so you've got this part that completely knows over here, and then you've got this part here that it knows it's that, but it can't cope with this world, because this world is a nightmare in comparison to reality. And so to be able to survive in this world, this part here has to make up parts that it pushes out into the world. So it makes up your egoic mind. Now, the egoic mind, it's hugely complex, and there's so much in it. There's just unimaginable amounts of made up stuff in there. But this made up mind, you make it up, or it makes itself up to protect you. That's its point. It's there to protect you because you're too innocent, too pure when you're to be able to cope with this world in the way that we're told to behave. It's like when you're first sent to school, for me, I was absolutely petrified. It was a terrifying experience for me, because I've always been very, very quiet and insular as a person, even as a tiny child. I was always shy. I was never a mixer. I never wanted to really be around many people. I was always a bit of a loner. And, at 4 years old, I might have been 5, I don't know. No, I was probably 4. Suddenly, you're thrust into this environment that, it was terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. I didn't realise all this. I've only realised this in retrospect, since I've been doing this and it's come out. But, my first day at school, when I was dropped off there, and it was a massive, big, old, Victorian, imposing building, and I was sent in with my brother, and of course my brother, 2 years older than me, he saw his mates, he was off, and suddenly I was just on my own among all these other small people, that varying sizes small people, flying around everywhere. And I was just looking at this building and just terrified. So it was as if I couldn't cope with that. And so I had to make a me that could cope. So I made the me that listened to authority, did as it was told, went to school and did those things. But that part that developed to me, it wasn't a happy part, because it was being made to do things it found abhorrent. And so it was terrified of being told off and being made to look stupid, which I was quite a lot. I don't know if they made me look stupid, or it was just my natural stupidity that did that. But I was very conscious of ever being in the limelight. If any attention was drawn to me for any reason, good or bad, I would find it awful, horrible. And so, that part had to develop. But that's not the only part that develops. We develop all these other sub-personalities that come out to do our bidding for us. And it's all very rarely well and good, but unfortunately they overtake us, and they become the dominant factors that rule our lives. And so you've got all these little bits of made-up mind that have all these thoughts and ideas that they believe, and the mind is constantly jumping forward, backwards. It's comparing the past and making the future. And depending which of these sub-personalities is awake at any moment depends on the experience that you'll be having in your consciousness. Because once the mind is awake and it's at the front, you take a back seat. And we live like that. But what we tend to do is we know that we're something else, but we live in this made-up mind. And living there is a horrible experience. And we're completely missing the wonder of life from there. Because that part of the mind doesn't see life as wonderful. It sees it as frightening, and things, it has to be controlled all the time, and everything is wrong and right and good and bad, and and it has all these ideas. The amount of ideas that your mind has is just unbelievable. The things it believes, the rubbish that it believes. When there's a wasp in it. When you get down with it and start to really look at it, you'll be astonished at what you find in there. It will literally blow your mind. But the thing is, the key to freedom is undoing that made-up mind. Because without undoing that made-up mind, you can't be free. Because freedom is already there. Freedom is here, over here, and then you've got this part here, and then you've got this massive bundle of made-up crap that you're trying to live through because you're in it all the time, because it pulls you in, and you following the thought after thought after thought after thought. Most people live in that, and they never even pop out. They never even pop out and think, God, what is going on here? I'm more than this, there's got to be more than this. Some people don't have that at all. They live, and when you mention that, they look at you like you ran the bloody twist. Can't believe that they just think you've lost it. But yeah, that can be dismantled, but it's not an easy job, and it's not a quick job, but it is the way to freedom. And in my experience, it's the only way to freedom, because the thing is, you cannot fly if you're wearing lead boots. You just can't. It's not possible. You have to get past and through what is holding you in ignorance. And that is what you've collected. Nothing else. It's nowhere else. All of your ignorance is in your own mind. Everything that keeps you from clarity is in your own mind. And it's those thoughts that come in all the time. People say, when I say you've got to start watching your thoughts to people, people say, yeah, but that's just my, I'm just making that up. That stuff that you're just making up, that's there in the background, that's the shit you've got to get rid of. Because that is what hampers you in your life. And without getting rid of it, you will spend however much time you spend trying to find reality and consciousness in its pure form. You can't, because it's behind that. You may have periods that I used to be able, before this happened to me, I used to be able to, using visualization of shooting myself out of the mind, I used to be able to spend time out there, and I got really good at it, and I could spend several hours an evening just in that place. But then as soon as I came back down into my mind, it was like a shitstorm again. It would all kick off again. The mind would be there waiting for me, and it gets agitated because it doesn't like you doing that, because it's not involved, and it doesn't know what you're doing, and it wants to control you because it thinks it has to look after you. It thinks it needs to keep you safe. So if you're going off doing something without it, it doesn't like it. So it wants to pull you back, pull you back, pull you back. And of course, also the mind is full of so much stuff. Like my self-loathing, when I eventually found that, it was so huge and so intense that there was absolutely no way that I could ever have been free while that was inside of me. It hated me, because it saw me as just an idiot, just this idiot that was just so stupid, that it caused all the problems in life through my curiosity and my wanting to experience. It saw me my expression, my artisticness. It saw as ridiculous. I've always been an arty person. I've always enjoyed making arty things, but this part would just rip them to shit as I was making them. I'd try and paint and things. I'm not very good at it, but I do quite like it. I'd be doing something and it would just be in the background, and in the end I stopped doing it for a long time, because every time I made anything it was so critical that it took what was a pleasure and made it into a miserable thing, because it couldn't bear for me to have any kind of happiness. So it saw me doing something like sitting down and creating something. It's just frivolous crap. How can you be in that place when this is reality? Because its reality was misery, absolute pain and misery. And so you can't expect pain and misery to enjoy life. How can it? And you can't expect to be able to say to it, "Oi, pain and misery, you're actually not real, and you don't need to be here anymore." It's not going to go, "Oh right, oh cheers," and bugger off. You have to empty it. And when I say empty it, what you have to do is allow it to come into your mind. So when you feel self-loathing, like mine used to come in, and it would criticise me constantly, but sometimes it would come in actually as a voice that I could distinguish. It would call me a fucking cunt, mainly, and it would start on me. It would pick on me. It would just, everything I thought, it would be on it, constantly ripping me to shit. And once this change happened for me, it wasn't able to do that anymore, because it would come in and I would see it. It would come in with its foul language, and but I would be like, oh, hello, hello, oh, what can I do for you, kind of thing. And I hated that. I hated it that I could see it, but it didn't. It hated it in the way that it couldn't help hating it, and it couldn't help hating me, because it literally was everything that I hadn't wanted, that I'd rejected. And I'd piled it all on to this part of me, said, hold that, and then I'd buggered off and left it with it. Of course it hated me. It saw me as just a fool. You go out there and you collect crap, and you bring it back and you give it to me to look after. And of course it didn't want to. So when I've actually seen it and accepted it and taken back, but you have to do it bit by bit. It's a slow process. So you have to reabsorb everything that it's holding. So that means every single experience that you've had in your life where you've loathed yourself. Each one has to be seen, and you have to see it from the perspective of realising that the way you behaved in that minute, or whatever happened in that minute, it could not have been any different, because you were where you were. And when you allow yourself to really drop into things, you can actually see it, because you can feel how you felt at that time. But when you have this perspective of now, to look in on that, and you can think, oh my God, of course you did. Of course you felt like that. And so you take back everything that you gave self-loathing to hold. Everything that it turned into self-loathing. Because what it turns into self-loathing is times when it feels that you caused it to not be loved. You pushed people away by your behaviour, or you behaved in a way that made somebody disappointed in you, and it, to stop the love from getting through. And that accumulates into our self-loathing, because we don't feel good enough. And when we don't feel good enough, love can't penetrate us, because it's such a big thing over the top that somebody can tell you that they love you and it just bounces right off. I can remember having that experience, my partner cuddling me and him saying I love you, and realising that it just was nothing, it meant nothing. It just sort of hit me and just went poof, and I was thinking, I can't absorb love. And you can't absorb love when you've got a great big pot of self-loathing that's going at the front. So love comes in and it can't accept love. What is love? Love is ridiculous. All it feels is pain and hurt. It can't absorb love. How can it? Love is stupid. It's ridiculous. It's, like when you feel at your most shit, and like when you're feeling really pissed off and upset and in loathing, and then someone comes in and they're all jolly and nice. You look at them and you think, you fucking idiot. Because that's what it, but that's, it can't, it can't feel happiness. It's like something that might make you laugh when you're in a happy place. When you're not, when that's alive in you, my stomach, it's rumbling. I must be hungry. I am hungry. So when, clarity is not possible without dismantling it. So it's not an easy task, and it's not much fun at points. And also, then this is really important that I mention, I'm saying all this to you from my perspective. And I'm saying to you, you've got to do this, and you need to tackle this, and you need to tackle that, and if you don't do this, this is always going to happen. But I'm very aware of the fact that until I had the awakening experience where my consciousness shifted from being in here, sort of coming out of here, but always being pulled back into madness, before that happened, I couldn't do this. Because I didn't have this clear perspective that I've now got where I can see my mind. Because from that point onwards, I've never been pulled into it again. So I've always got that one step removed. So the mind can be doing whatever the mind's doing, but I'm never involved, even though it's happening inside of me. So that's in itself sounds strange, doesn't it? But so it's all very well for me to say you've got, what you need to do is this, and this, but I couldn't do it until that happened to me. And so what's important, I think, is to get a firm understanding of this part of you that's in the middle as much as you can. There's the completely free, completely lost, and then there's you in the middle. So what this part in the middle needs to do is, as much as it can, is to get out of the crazy and into the clarity. I mean, obviously, that's what we need to do. And the more time this part spends in clarity, the harder it is for the mind to take it over. Because obviously it gets, you need to establish a base of who you are. What am I? Because that eventually that is what you will end up being. But that is so crowded by the mind that this middle guy can't get the clarity. And so what you need to do is, this middle guy, the one that is you, that's thinking, I want freedom, sit with that part that's thinking how much you want to be free, and how much you know, because you do know what reality is. And try and establish that as firmly as you can. And to me, the way to do that is to go into meditation or a meditative state, or self-hypnosis. You can even listen to guided meditations. I used to listen to Paul McKenna, who's an English hypnotherapist, and he does CDs, and they're on YouTube. I've listened to them. And when I first discovered that I had the ability to travel out, it was because I was listening to one of his CDs about something like how to be thin. It didn't work. But what did work was that I found that as he took you on that initial journey out of the mind, by occupying the mind, that I could slip out and off. So try that. Try anything that gets you out of the made-up mind, so that you can establish your sense of self as much as you can. I mean, eventually you realise that sense of self actually doesn't exist, but you need that initially to get away from this because eventually this sense of, you build up this sense of self here that knows it's not that, but eventually once that's gone, it realises it's not real either, actually, and that all it needs is to be over here with this. It doesn't need to be worried about it, but there's stages in that, and there's no point in talking about the top of the mountain when you're at the bottom of the mountain, and there's no point, which I used to do, of thinking I was further up the mountain than I was. You've got to take it back to basics. If you're not free because your mind is keeping you stuck, nothing else. It's what you're holding in your mind that keeps you out of freedom, nothing else, only that, because you are underneath that made-up mind, you are free. You are already enlightened. I used to hear people say that, and I think, bollocks. But it's true, you are. Underneath the made-up mind, you are free. I don't know whether I should just stop talking now. Probably should. I've been talking for ages, and I don't even know if it makes any sense. I don't know anything makes any sense. I'm trying to look at the time, but my eyes are so old now that I have to go out just to see the clock. So, what I'll do, because this video stopped 3 times, because as I'm doing it, I've pushed the wrong button, so you'll find that it has a few jumpy bits in it, because my editing skills are still rubbish. If I've missed anything out, I'll put a bit at the end. I might not even put this up, but you don't need to know that, because if I don't, I won't, and it won't exist to you. Anyway, any questions? I think it'd be quite a nice idea to make a video of if people have got questions, because I know people do have questions. So yeah, if you do, send me a message. Okay, bye.